The day of my grandfather's funeral was grey and cold. The sky looked heavy, like it was holding back rain. People stood quietly in black coats outside the old church. Some were crying. Others were whispering about memories, about his kindness, about the long life he had lived. My grandfather was the kind of man everyone respected. Not because he was rich, but because he was fair, honest, and impossible to fool. At least, that's what I always believed. Inside the church, the first rows were reserved for family. My father sat stiffly in the front pew. Next to him sat my stepmother, Diana. Her face looked sad, but the sadness didn't reach her eyes. Beside her was my stepsister, Lily. She wasn't crying either. Instead, she kept glancing around the room like she was waiting for something. Or someone. I sat in the last row. That's where I had been sitting in this family for years. Ever since my father remarried. Ever since Diana and Lily moved into our house. At first, they acted sweet. Too sweet. Bringing gifts. Complimenting everyone. Calling my grandfather Dad even though they had only known him for a few months. But my grandfather noticed things other people didn't. I remember one afternoon 2 years ago. We were sitting on his porch, drinking tea. He looked at me and said quietly, "Some people love family." Then he paused. "And some people love what family owns." At the time, I didn't fully understand. But I do now. The priest began the ceremony. Soft music filled the church. People spoke about my grandfather's generosity, his honesty, his stubborn sense of justice. Then came the moment everyone was secretly waiting for. The lawyer stood up. He cleared his throat and opened a black folder. "My name is Mr. Carter," he said. "I am here to read Mr. Thomas Walker's final will." A ripple moved through the room. My stepmother suddenly sat up straighter. My stepsister leaned forward eagerly. I noticed the way they exchanged a quick glance. The kind of glance people share when they think they've already won. My grandfather had owned a lot. The house. The land. The old family business. People whispered that it was worth millions. Mr. Carter adjusted his glasses and began reading. "To my dear friends and neighbors," he said, "I leave my gratitude and small tokens of appreciation." People nodded politely. Then he continued. "To my son." My father looked down. "I leave the watch my father gave me." My father swallowed hard. It wasn't about money for him. It never was. But I saw Diana's expression tighten. She clearly expected something bigger. Then the lawyer turned the page. "And now," he said slowly, to Diana and Lily. Both of them leaned forward, almost smiling. The entire room felt the tension. Mr. Carter read the next line carefully. "I leave them exactly what they deserve." A strange murmur passed through the church. My stepmother frowned. "What does that mean?" Lily whispered. But the lawyer didn't answer. Instead, he reached into the folder and pulled out a small envelope. "This," he said, "was a special instruction from Mr. Walker." My stepmother's confidence returned instantly. She crossed her arms with a smug smile. "See," she whispered to Lily. But the lawyer's voice turned serious. "Mr. Walker also left evidence." The word evidence echoed in the silent church. My stomach dropped. Because suddenly I remembered something. 3 weeks before he died, my grandfather had laughed while showing me a small camera hidden on his bookshelf. He had said, "Sometimes the truth needs witnesses." Back in the church, Mr. Carter slowly lifted a small USB drive from the envelope. My stepmother's smile faded. "What is that?" she asked sharply. The lawyer looked up. Then he said something that made the entire room hold its breath. "This recording explains why Mr. Walker made the decisions in his will." At that moment, a projector behind the altar flickered to life. The screen lit up. And my stepmother's face turned completely pale. Because the video had just begun to play. And within seconds, everyone in that church would see exactly who she really was. But what shocked everyone the most was the sound that came from the speakers. It was my grandfather's voice. Laughing. The projector hummed softly as the video filled the screen. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my grandfather appeared. He was sitting in his study, the same old chair near the bookshelf. The hidden camera must have been placed right across from him. He looked older than I remembered, but his eyes were sharp. Very sharp. He leaned forward and smiled slightly. "If you're watching this," he said calmly, "then I'm probably already gone." A few people in the church wiped their eyes. But my stepmother and stepsister weren't emotional anymore. They looked nervous. My grandfather continued. "I spent my whole life believing family should be protected," he said. "But protection also means knowing the truth." He reached over and tapped something off screen. The video suddenly changed. Now it showed the living room in his house. The date appeared in the corner. 2 months ago. The room was empty at first. Then the door opened. My stepmother, Diana, walked in. Lily followed behind her. They didn't know they were being recorded. Diana looked around quickly before speaking. "Did he sign the papers yet?" Lily asked. "Not yet," Diana replied impatiently. "But he will. And if he doesn't?" Lily said. Diana shrugged coldly. "Then we'll make sure he does." A gasp moved through the church. My father slowly lifted his head. But the video wasn't finished. Lily sat on the couch, smirking. "I still can't believe he trusts you," she laughed. Diana's voice turned sharp. "Of course he trusts me. Old men are easy." More whispers filled the room. Then came the line that made everything explode. "Once he's gone," Diana said calmly, "that house, the land, the business, it's all ours." My father stood up suddenly. "No," he whispered. On the screen, Lily laughed again. "And what about your husband?" Diana rolled her eyes. "Please," she said. "He's too weak to question anything." The church fell completely silent. My stepmother's face turned ghost white. "Turn it off," she shouted suddenly. But the lawyer didn't move. Because the video still had one last part. The camera returned to my grandfather in his chair. He sighed deeply. "If Diana and Lily are watching this," he said slowly, "then they probably just realized something." He leaned closer to the camera. And smiled. "You weren't smarter than me." Behind me, someone whispered, "Oh my God." My grandfather's voice echoed one last time through the church. "And that is exactly why my real heir already knows the truth." At that moment, every head in the room turned, looking for the person he meant. And then the lawyer slowly looked up from the will. The moment the lawyer looked at me, the entire church turned silent. Every head slowly turned. People whispered, "Wait, him?" My stepmother stared at me like she had just seen a ghost. "That's impossible," Diana snapped. "He's just a kid." The lawyer calmly adjusted his glasses. Then he continued reading the will. After careful thought, he said, "Mr. Thomas Walker leaves his home, land, and business to his grandson." My heart started pounding. "To the one person," the lawyer added, "who never asked for anything." A quiet murmur spread through the church. My father looked at me with wide, emotional eyes. But Diana exploded. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "That video proves nothing." The lawyer calmly placed another document on the table. "It proves more than enough," he replied. "Your attempts to manipulate Mr. Walker were recorded over several weeks." He also submitted copies to his attorney. Diana's confidence collapsed instantly. Lily looked like she might cry. But the biggest shock came next. The lawyer pressed a small button on the remote. The projector played one last clip of my grandfather. He leaned back in his chair, smiling like he always did when he outsmarted someone. "If you're watching this," he said warmly, "then justice did its job." He chuckled softly. "Greed makes people forget something important." He pointed toward the camera. "The truth is always watching." The video ended. The room stayed silent for a long moment. Then slowly, people began to stand up. Some shaking their heads at Diana. Others quietly congratulating my father. As for me, I just looked at the empty screen. For the first time, I felt like my grandfather was still protecting us. Even after he was gone. Moral of the story: greed can fool people for a while, but the truth always finds a way to come out. If you enjoyed this story, Don't forget to like thumbs up sign and subscribe bell for more powerful stories like this.